Hi,
Hello and
guys.
welcome.
Thanks.
Today we have Tom Riccobono from Interlochen Arts Academy. Um, Tom and I go way back when I studied with him for a year at the academy, and I just am so excited to host you. It feels a little bit like full circle being able to come back and bring one of my former teachers on um, and talk about music and your life and your career. I wanted to open it up and ask what you've taught at Interlochen for now how long? I honestly don't remember.
A quarter of a century. This is
Woo!
25. Yeah,
Incredible.
seems like
Um,
yesterday.
in those 25 years of teaching at Interlochen, what trends have you seen in students across the board that come to you and that work with you? Either whether it's like a 1 year kind of deal like I did, or they end up studying with you for 4 years.
Hmm. They keep getting better. They just keep getting better. I mean, I'll tell you, Akshat, and speaking of coming full circle, it's awesome to work with you as a professional when you come work with the Institute. And that's what is full circle for me. I mean, it's the greatest, uh, you know, um, sort of love of teaching is when you get to work side by side with a student. Now, when I started, and I really mean it. I mean, it seems like yesterday, but when I started, I was told, don't teach the Von Williams tuba concerto. It's not it's too early for these kids. It's just too hard, the high notes and everything. And I defied all of this advice, and I taught the Von Williams tuba concerto first movement, but on C tuba, and I very quickly started requiring F tuba, and it wasn't too long after that that students were regularly coming in playing the John Williams tuba concerto, and now they're playing Reflections on the Mississippi. So, and the reason why is they hear professionals playing this music, sometimes alumni playing this music, and they say, "I can do that." And so the bar is, I don't want to say the bar is being raised. That sounds kind of trite, but I think that kids are really inspired by everything that has gone before them, and that's the way music should work. So that's really the biggest trend. And I appreciate the question because any educator knows that there are sort of micro trends. Each class has its own look and feel. You can't quite put your finger on it. And I think all teachers read a lot about you know Gen X, Gen Y, and millennials and Gen Z, and the homesteaders. And so there's definitely a feel to every class. But I think students would protest, and they would demand, and they were a little bit unwieldy, and that's coming out of the 70s. That's kind of died down. There isn't collective bargaining. There isn't protests and sit-ins and things like that, and that's good because we can just get down to business and teach. Um, Although I do find that they're a little bit more willing to take things, I think, that than earlier classes, and it's both good and bad. So those are just some of the things. I could write a book seriously about trends and where things are going, and where I think it will go. So great question. Oh, sure. I mean, obviously, with technology, the generation before me had one record or maybe three records, and they wore it out. And I had cassette tapes, like the CS Solo Brass 1971 album. I wore it out and eventually got a record. And now kids have access to so much. And there was a period there where a lot of master classes, older faculty would say, kids just don't avail themselves of what they have out there. We had one record, but they won't even listen. I don't think that's true today. And this is pretty recent, but students know they know a lot and are listening to a lot of orchestras and a lot of players. And the inspiration is interesting. I've had at least three tuba students from about the same area in Ohio. Now think about that for a second. So Carol Yonch, just right around the area where Carol Yonch is from, and then actually I think it's four, and more from Ohio, that were literally inspired by Carol's path and her record, and saying, I can do that. And so kids get inspiration from seeing incredible musicians just make expressive music and be daring and push the envelope. And it's great when you see it happen, and you see the trend, like specifically Carol and these other women from right around the same area. But they get inspiration from all different areas, and there's so much to see. A lot of kids are checking out Toby Oft, and of course Joe Alessi, Christian Lindbergh, Demondre Thurman. I mean, these names, it's these names that really are meaningful. They're heroes. They listen to them play, and they want to do that. And at a young age, they're trying to do what they're doing, and I think that's what continues the growth of music over time. Yeah, sure. Not necessarily avant-garde, by and large, and that most students don't really grasp onto, Robert Kraft and Burial, Luciano Berio. I mean, sometimes they do. John Cage is always popular, but so a former student of mine, a wonderful trombone player, principal of the Buffalo Philharmonic, Jonathan Lombardo, won our concerto competition not once but twice in a row, and which is fantastic. It's hard enough to win on a low brass instrument. And the first time he won, I mean, you tell students before competition, deep breathing, mindfulness, relaxation, try to visualize yourself. There's a lot of things that all teachers will tell their students before they go into something, death-defying like a concerto competition, which is comprising all instruments. And so after the competition, I said, "So what did you do?" And he said, "I listened to rap." Or heavy metal. I think it was rap, something really like loud and violent. And I've had some students go sort of off script, and it's surprising. But I think a lot of times students will do exactly what they're told, and I think it's inspiring to see what they come up with when they figure out something that works that is not necessarily conventional. So that was one particularly surprising event.
Amazing. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about your conducting career. You've been a conductor for as long as I've known you, and probably much longer. And I wanted to ask, when you were a student navigating the industry and picking, what am I going to do with my career and what I bring to the table as an educator? What inspired you to start conducting, and what have you noticed over the years of conducting, both amateurs and professionals, what the similarities are?
Yeah, great question. I had no idea I'd be conducting. I mean, at the Eastman School of Music, I took a conducting course, and it didn't go well, and I had no aspirations to be a conductor at that time, and that's college. And at the Interlochen Arts Academy, you have students taking conducting classes, and are passionate about it. I didn't have that. They're taking courses. Some of them want to major in conducting. So I had that one course, and that was it. And when I came to Interlochen in Traverse City, I joined the Traverse Symphony Orchestra, and but I was traveling a lot. I would sub with the Grand Rapids Symphony, the Detroit Symphony, go on tour, do gigs, do recital tours, and things like that. And then I started having kids, and they were small, and I wanted to be close to them. I didn't want to miss out and just be a traveling musician, always doing shows. And that was the inspiration. And the pay scale here at that time, 15 years ago, was low. And so you asked one of the, what you notice as a conductor. Number one, you notice that the pay scale is a lot higher, and so all the traveling, I didn't have to do that if I started conducting. I knew that, and also, and this is really true. I find this continually. You get a whole lot more respect from maybe people who are in the front of the orchestra, and you might see them at a gig where you're holding a little brass instrument, and the next day you're conducting, and boy, you're really important. I think this is the most important thing that I want all musicians to know. Two things really is, first of all, find your passion, and if it's composing, I don't have a passion for it, but go for it. Nobody should do conducting just because somebody else does it. But the reason why conducting was what I chose to do as sort of moonlighting is I found myself dreaming every night of conducting. It was a dream, and that became a reality. That's where it started. And so if it's arts administration, teaching, conducting, chamber music, composing new music, if it's something you're dreaming about, passionate about, go for it. And I started really late in my career, and I put together a resume that looked amazing, because there's one thing you learn as you get older is how to make a resume that looks good. And so I turned it in. I got a job as a college conductor, band conductor, and in the community. And so now I got a job. What am I going to do? I had this one course at Eastman, and I didn't, really take it seriously. And this is the other thing I would really love all of my students to understand is what you do in the practice room is the same thing you do on the podium, the same exact thing. There's some basic patterns, and I'll just show you, because I just taught a conducting course, and these are two great books. Okay, you can study technique. These are great. Okay, but that was after. What you learn to do is to breathe with momentum. All great musicians learn to ocean, and so I got this gig, and what the heck am I gonna do? Are they even gonna follow me? And I just breathed, and everybody came in, and it was like magic. I started studying conducting from that point. I went to a couple great friends, Kevin Rhodes, Matt Hazelwood, and Jung Ho Pak, and I would just pick their brains. I would call them when I was scared. I was walking into a professional gig, my first professional with all professional musicians conducting, and it's just you do what you do in the practice room. So likewise, when teachers say you should conduct your pieces, take a break, do mental practice, and conduct, everybody has the skills to conduct. You don't necessarily need a course. You need a course for all the other things outside of just the stick technique. And so and I do conduct some really terrific amateur groups with they're terrific. They're great because I'm like one of the younger people on the stage, and that's really cool. And they're so passionate, and most of them have been so successful in some amazing career and made a lot of money, and they all say, I wish I was a musician. I wish I had done something different. I wish I went into music. And their passion and their love of music is amazing. But their style and musicality is great. But they have, motor functions that, because of age and because it wasn't their major, a lot of times is behind. Where students that we often encounter, it's the opposite. They have great motor skills, but they don't have a sense of style between Mozart and Mahler and Brahms and Stravinsky and there is an inherent musicality. It's incredible how expressive these adults can be. But I have sort of a niche that, I love conducting professional orchestras and bands and professional and amateur. It's all good, really. Last thing about conducting is I get to pick the music, so I never have to play something I don't like. That's the best thing about it.
Jealous Matt over here. Um, about kind of having these different, not just positions but roles. I speak with my students a lot of the time when we're working on solo repertoire and chamber music repertoire, and like, what is the role you're serving? How do you accomplish it? How do you supersede kind of the level of excellence that you're trying to go for? In conducting, do you feel when you're conducting your students versus when you're working with them one-on-one, do you hear them differently? Do you feel like you have a different set of ears with the stick in your hand instead of with a trombone in your hand?
No, I think that was the first thing that I had to tackle is listening when you're conducting because you're thinking about what you're going to say. I love conducting an ensemble with my students because I can address them very quickly. I think the pulpit or the the position is better for teaching them because you can correct all kinds of ensemble things that you can correct before. Like if you're conducting Hungarian march, you can say immediately, don't you realize that you're playing with the cello here? Why are you playing so loud? Match their style, match their bowing. And so it's a great teaching moment. But I would say very early on, that was kind of the biggest thing I had to fix. That was my biggest deficit is while you're conducting, and you have to hear in reverse, and you have to hear in the future, and plus know what you're doing. You have to remember what they did wrong or what the challenge is, and you have to be thinking about that retardando or fermata coming up. So you have to be in 3 time frames. You never a challenge from the podium. My own students, particularly, listening to everybody else was a little bit different. So I had to make sure not to just focus on them.
Um, we brought up Institute a little bit, and Institute, for those who don't know, is a shorter 1 week-ish long camp hosted at Interlochen, where students can come and get kind of a little bit of a crash course, and they get a ton of rehearsals, a ton of warm-up classes, master classes, performances. It's a really special week, and what I'm thankful for is getting the opportunity to train and continue to be mentored by you since I left Interlochen. And I wonder, what pieces of advice would you give students that are now graduating or navigating life right after college, right after maybe a master's degree or a doctoral degree, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I do this thing, and what's next, and how do I lay down the foundation for a long and healthy career?
Take care of your body, take care of your mind, take care of your spirit. Most important thing, because this is our instrument. You got to work out, you got to meditate, you have to keep yourself healthy, you have to eat healthily. It's just really super important. You have to have friends, you have to have a support network, and because if you don't, even if you can somehow play really well and win a position, you're you're not gonna be as happy. You should live your life. I think, unfortunately, when I was younger, you were told, "Oh, if you're dating, if you're having relationships, it's going to get in the way of your career." And I never really found that was true. So, mindfulness is literally being in the moment and getting rid of your anxiety and depression, which is hard enough as it is, being a human being and especially being a musician. But if you can practice every day being, finding the joy in the moment, that's the most important thing. As when you leave college, the network is so super important, because very rare is it that somebody shows up to the audition, and I mean, just do the numbers of how many collegiate musicians there are and how many openings there are. But so much work is generated by the network, and so much. I mean, that's just so important when you call a friend or call somebody. I would cold call people and say, a principal trombone player, can I come play duets with you? And hopefully, this is leading to getting on the sub list. I did that so much, so that learning, keeping your network that is being good to your colleagues, being really super good to those people that you're sitting next to in college orchestra and band, but broadening that network and knowing how to bring people into your field. But in today's world, it's a little bit different. You have to learn how to generate work. Exactly what you're doing. I mean, you're part entrepreneur, and you're generating something that's bigger than yourself. You guys are doing really terrific work in this interview series and the camp that you have coming up. And that's what you have to do, is create work, especially after what has happened, after the lockdown and shutdowns. All musicians are going to have to roll up their sleeves and put this back together. We can't count on board of directors, and we can't count on patrons. We're going to have to get really good at playing chamber music and being versatile. I think that all of us, not just young students in college, and this has always been true for young students, but versatility means being well versed in jazz and pop and chamber music, and everybody has to be part arts administrator and part composer, arranger, and conductor, and singer and teacher. So I think those are what I would think. But it starts with healthy mind, body, and spirit. But that's a great question, because we're all going to build this great thing that we had back together, and I think it's going to take a lot of work. And if we all really chip in, that sounds kind of hokey, but if we all really work at it, I think we're going to get there pretty soon.
Beautifully said. Sorry, I have to manage two things since apparently one button is not good enough for me to stay silent. There are two in front of me. All of that I really personally resonate with. I'm primarily a euphonium player, so if I didn't make my own work, I'd be like the best practicing performer on the face of the earth. I wanted to talk a little bit. We've been doing a lot of this in that we're sharing experience, we're sharing wisdom with an audience, and I want to speak more to you, to specifically who you are, and as just to have people who are watching who are interested in Interlochen or interested in our event to learn more about Tom Riccobono than they could learn from your artist bio on any number of websites. I describe to my students that every musician has an audible business card, in that what the music you play and the music that you really cherish is basically your sonic presentation, your sonic email address or phone number that people associate with you. What is Tom Riccobono's audible business card?
That's really what a great concept. I'm a lyrical player. Yeah, I'm a lyrical player and a musical player, as opposed to I mean, I've performed Bluebells of Scotland. I've worked on Creston Fantasy a lot and taught it a lot. But I really prefer beautiful lyrical pieces, and I like beautiful sounding pieces. I like Wazen and Yongen, and Botza. And so that's kind of my thing. And I do like the classics. I like standard repertoire. Although when I was in college, I was looking for everything that wasn't standard and transcribing and doing a lot of just stealing instruments, other instruments' repertoire. But I really like the standards, and I like beautiful music because I've played for so many audiences. At this point, I'm very in touch, in tune with audiences, and I really like to interact with them. And I don't like to interact with them in a way that challenges them and makes them a little bit prickly, that brings them in and wants to bring them back. Because there's valid points for that too. And I very much with my art form want to connect to people. I like it at this point because there was a different time. I mean, this, student, you have to grow, you have to play very challenging pieces, and but most of the recitals I do now, all of them are they're for an audience of patrons. I'm getting paid, and it's something that I want to continue to do. And a lot of it is interacting with them after. After I'm done, I go out and I talk to people, shake their hands. What did you like? What didn't you like? So I'm listening to that constantly. And if they like, the Foray Pavane, and Bach Cello Suite, then, I'll play that instead of a Barrio Sequenza. So as a performer, and were you asking as a teacher also, or like when you, I mean...
Actually, that was my second, that was going to be my second question is, what makes studying with you obvious to someone else? How do you tell that someone is a student of Tom Riccobono?
Norman Bolter said about one of my, boy, I could tell you're a Riccobono student the way you breathe. I'm a big fan of Arnold Jacobs. It might not look like that all the time, because I will talk about fundamentals in technique and physicality, because that's what Arnold Jacobs talked about with me. I'm a product of John Marcellus and Arnold Jacobs, Frank Crisafulli, Michael Mulcahy, Charlie Vernon, and Mark Lusk. And I'll steal this from Mark Lusk because he's just amazing and brilliant. And he said, I'm a teacher of people, not the trombone. And I care about people. And if somebody's life isn't going too well at that moment, we got to figure that out, and let's put the horn down and let's talk. And everybody's a different approach. Everybody has a different language that they understand. Everybody has a different tolerance for feedback, both negative and positive. And I really believe in reading people and figuring out, boy, they just really don't like compliments at all. or this person doesn't really respond to negative feedback, and this person's more in the abstract, this person's more concrete. I think it's really important to discern. And the most important thing for me is we're in a partnership. I never feel that it should be adversarial. We are partners, and you tell me what your goals are, and we're gonna work together to get there. And you will get there if we work together. I don't prefer the type of teaching that says, if you do what I say, you're gonna, because that's not necessarily always true. But if you work together in partnership, you'll always get there.
Beautifully said. We have a question from an audience member that you know very well, Andre Prouty.
Oh my gosh.
Andre is asking, do you think that the curriculum in most programs... Oh, go ahead. There we go.
Oh, no, I just saw his post from today. Never mind. No, go ahead. I'll talk about that later.
Do you think that the curriculum in most music programs today do enough to prepare music students to have the skills for a career in music that totally prepares them in today's landscape? If not, what would the perfect music program look like?
Some do and some don't. Not too long ago, I had a sabbatical, and Jonathan Lombardo, Matthew Lyon came and taught for me. And I studied arts leadership, and I went to Indiana University, and I went to the Eastman School of Music, and I checked out what they had, and it was pretty cool. The Eastman School of Music, I'm thinking about particularly because Sophie Volpe is a recent graduate of the Interlochen Arts Academy and now Eastman School of Music, and she gave a masterclass that was terrific. And she talks a lot about the arts leadership program at Eastman, and I could see it because I visited there and I watched the classes. I met all the faculty, and I saw what they did that was really, really cool. And I could see it in her talk. I mean, she didn't talk about arts leadership, I thought that she was prepared very well for the modern world. I think that um, um, what schools may be lacking, and I don't really know which schools are. I don't want to say like this school's because I don't know who doesn't do this. I think a lot of schools are trying to catch up. So I couldn't name any names if you ask me, but I would say that all schools that want to be successful and bring kids in need, number one, an arts leadership program, but it has to have a meaning. So the study of music has to have meaning, like not just do it because we said so, and But here's like the Artist Citizen book by that Pelosi guy at Juilliard is a good example of we're going to show why this is meaning, why this has meaning, and why we're doing what we're doing, and then they have to have a growth mindset. This is how you're going to grow from wherever you are and get to where you're going, and it has to be inclusive, and it has to be very versatile. So I think those elements must be present in any curriculum, and often they're not. But whether it's in the curriculum or not, I feel personally that each and every faculty member has to adopt great meaning, a growth mindset, inclusiveness, versatility, and an arts leadership curriculum in their own studio. And I think all teachers do. So even if it's lacking in a curriculum, you should be getting it in your private lessons.
Sorry, the two-button system is still too much for my mind to handle. I think that's really interesting. Something that I've been thinking about a lot, really since Akshat asked me a question the first ILBI talk, is the idea of understanding the intentions behind what we do. I'm always surprised sometimes when there's a disconnect between things at the school that I teach at. When I was younger, I might be one of the few nerds who did this, but when I was in music history, I had my big Norton anthology. Every time we covered something, I went and like tried to learn how to play those things. So I had the connection between the intention of music history class and the intention of my private lessons and understanding. I think one of the things that's really important is for students to understand that there might already be an intention behind some things, whether it's explicitly shown or not. We're in music theory class. I ask a lot of theoretical questions in my student class. I'm a lover of form. I'm a lover of having answers. And so sometimes when in the book we had examples, beautiful Tchaikovsky, Mozart, Beethoven things, and then those are just things you look at and you don't actually experience as a musician for some reason. Is that it's all music, and so whether it means something to you, you have to experience it first. This kind of segues a little bit into our next question. What inspires you today after a 25-year legacy at the Interlochen Center? What inspires you today to be your best after 25 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's easy. I mean, when I'm teaching, I mean, if you could say, oh, you've had thousands of students, and right now I have quite a few, but I only have one. It's the student in the room. Now think about that. I only have one student, and I don't compare them to the 1,000 that went before, or the 1,000 that will come after them, or anybody else walking in before or after them. You're my focus right now. And talk about intent. I'm very intentional about that. And if they're playing Morceau Symphonique, I don't want them to think I've heard it a million times, or that I'm bored with it at all, or bored with them. Hey, you're doing your best, and let's hear it. And I love this piece. And if I go in with a mindset really, literally, like I'm going to listen to this like it's the first time. Hey, everybody's flat on the G flat. No, that'd be, you want to bring that up. and and so what inspires me is each and every individual student, because they do bring something new and something unique. Every single one of them, and they all have hopes and dreams that are different. My dad inspires me. Now, my dad started me on trombone. He was drummer, and played string bass and played gigs his whole life, and he could play all the band instruments very, very well. And the family joke was like he wasn't a very good pianist because he had a bum finger, and so, but he could play all the tunes. He had an incredible ear. Totally never had a lesson on piano. Recently, in the last 3 years, his memory has diminished, and he has dementia, to the point where he can read the newspaper and not know what he's read. But he's got a catalog of about 4,000 tunes in his head, and he can sit down in this home, and my mom leads him downstairs, and they're all up there, and he can play any one of them, melody and the right chords, and it just flows, and that's incredible to me. And if my mind goes, I would like that to be the last thing there is incredible music. And so those are the biggest things. I mean, I could say something like Roger Bobo and Joe Leslie. They do still to this day. Christian Lindbergh. It never gets old. I love listening to anything conducted by Abbado, Mazel, and Bernstein. But biggest inspiration for me is the student in the room, and it will always be my dad.
Going into our last question, I want to look forward, and I wanted to ask you, what are some projects that maybe are in the pipeline, or some dream projects of yours that you're looking forward to as you continue your career?
Yeah, I'm trying to put back together this orchestra because of the pandemic. It's hurt so many musicians, but these adult learners, especially because they were at the most risk, have really been affected. They've been shut up in their homes. And the Benzie County, that's where Matt Lyons is from, my former student and your teacher. Every time I walk into the high school, I think about Matt. I'm trying to put back together this orchestra and plan a season where everybody can come back. And I'm actively looking into protocols that make everybody feel safe, that they can come back, and planning the season, and very, very active in promoting an audience and fundraising and all those things. So that right now, that's really on the forefront of my mind. I'm on a lot of committees at Interlochen. I have a pretty cool and pretty demanding performance coming up with the Trevor Symphony Orchestra, because it's music of Bernstein and Previn and Gershwin and Michael Tilson Thomas. So these are, this is not, the Cheatham Scherzo Benkel Sangalieder concert. This is, or the Arnold and a big Ewald or something. This is all major stuff. So I'm listening to this music and practicing and working it out slowly. And I've done a lot with helping the Trevor Symphony Orchestra, of course, stay alive virtually. And then the institutes that you talk about are now called intensives. They're intensives, and I'm putting together the intensive, and then the summer camp will happen with band and orchestra, full band and orchestra at Interlochen. I think there will be some changes, because of what's going on, but I'm actively involved in the planning for that. So that's what's very much consuming my time right now, especially the Previn. I love that piece.
Exciting and admirable. Just to have such exciting plans that are, in my opinion, both COVID influenced and just clearly artistic, and long reaching. We're coming to the end of our chat. Though I'm sure if people would want, and if enough coffee was brought, we could go for a good number of hours. We like to end we like to end our chats with kind of a simple but honest question. What are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for the building that I left at, this afternoon, and all the students in it, because they're all practicing hard and working so hard on the same excerpts that have been played, for the last 100 years, and they're going through a lot. I mean, they're not complaining. They're suffering, but it's just amazing and very inspiring to see the work that they're doing. I'm very, very grateful for that, and I'm most grateful for my family and you guys. I think what you're doing is really, really super cool, and I just applaud you.
End the interview. We got it.
Being entrepreneurs, yeah. Yeah, that's great. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, Tom. I guess I'll go next. I'm grateful for the opportunity to return to some in-person hybrid teaching these past few weeks and going into next week. Merit School of Music is doing its first kind of hybrid in-person day, conservatory day, next Saturday, and I'm going to get an opportunity to actually see some of my students in person for the first time and hear their sounds in person for the first time. I'm really excited to sit side by side with them too in some rehearsals and play, just get to be back in that environment after a year.
Great.
Almost exactly a
Great.
year. It's going to be really cool.
Wow. Great.
I wanna express my gratitude towards I work with some very inspiring people. This evening has been inspiring. The man to, I guess, my left on YouTube, Akshat has always been an inspiring artist and communicator and friend. Earlier today, another organization I work with, we're doing kind of a chamber music intensive thing in terms of talking about rehearsal techniques. I just wanted to give a shout out to my friends and colleagues in that, Nick Belchev, Juan Alonso, Eric Doishineski, and Charles Villarubia. It's been a long Monday. I've spent a lot of it in front of my computer, and it's easy for me to keep going when I'm surrounded by such caring and inspiring artists.
Cool.
Thank you for everyone who joined us today. And if you want to keep up with what we're doing, go ahead and follow our Instagram page, follow our YouTube channel. We're going to be getting some content onto here as well. In 2 weeks, on March 14th, you have an opportunity to see Tom Riccobono again, because he'll be joining us for a Spring Forward event, where we're going to be doing a 2-hour masterclass interview, hybrid kind of mixture thing, and it's also going to be followed by 1-hour session where I talk about how to use etudes to your advantage, etude books and different resources that we all have. And then we're going to end the event with a mock audition competition. And our premium judge is Alan Tinkham from the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestras. Thanks again to everybody who's watching, and I hope you all have a great night.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Akshat. Great to see you guys.
Great to see you.